space is one of a kind. The cheery wall graffiti saying proudly that it's a space run by trans people and queer folk. It was started 3 years ago by Zainab Patel, one of India's leading voices for trans rights. As a transgender woman, she has used her lived experience to petition India's legal system, harness and fashion corporate India's DEI initiatives, and create social enterprises that empower the community. So, as the American President Donald Trump decimates DEI or diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives one executive order at a time, what's becoming clear is that there is a direct attack or direct targeting of transgender people and trans rights. The world is watching carefully because this will have repercussions across the globe in terms of creating transphobia and also in the way in which this subject is going to be framed for discussion. And who better to discuss and to understand what's going on, what one makes of this, than with Zainab. Zainab, I am so happy to meet you, but the time that we are meeting in seems to be, to me, anxiety-inducing. Do you think what we are seeing in America, is that going to unleash transphobia across the world?
So my first very candid reaction to this, Anuradha, is that, like this very funny meme that I saw that, Donald, ye to kya kiya? Oh, my friend Donald, what did you do? So we've seen that not only in terms of corporate programs, in terms of society, you see a lot of people who are anti-left or anti-center actually rising up to the rhetoric and saying that if America, which was seen to be the cradle for all of these liberal thoughts, is now reverting back to the original stand, why should other countries stand back and hold the baby with the bathwater?
Yeah. When you watch this, do you see the whole debate getting framed differently? Because all the rights that transgender folks have got has taken there are battles that you have fought both individually and collectively. What will this do?
See, my biggest fear is not so much so on the policy front or on the legislative front, is about undoing the gains that we have made on social front.
So social acceptance.
Social acceptance is facing huge criticism. You open up any meme today on Instagram, Facebook, X, and you see the hate rhetoric that's going on. People say that, oh, these are crazy folks. They do not know who they are. Today they are a man, tomorrow they are a woman, third day they are non-binaries, fourth day you're a unicorn. So I think this is kind of pushing back the agenda by at least 100 years. We are going back to the conversation about God created only two genders, man and women.
That's what America is saying now.
God.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to say this, that's not applicable for us. But an Abrahamic version of what the two genders that was created and the roles that they were. So you're putting that into perspective.
Almost a license to behave badly as well, isn't it, to people, these kind of actions at the executive level in America?
I think it's a license for bad behavior, dog whistling everywhere. See, when I was a petitioner in the marriage equality case, this is exactly the kind of language that the Additional Solicitor General on behalf of the Government of India and all the lawyers and parties opposed to us on marriage equality said in court. They said we were elitists, we don't know what we are, this kind of rights are going to ruin everything, it will lead to the dissolution of the societal fabric, you are urban elitists, you are few in numbers, etc. So when we challenge that on the grounds of equity and equality, they absolutely kind of said that nothing doing. We understand that you are sad, but this is going to change the societal frame. So what is being said today was said exactly a year ago in our courtrooms by people who represented some fractions of the Indian society.
Some of the language seems to me to be very, very, disturbing. For instance, the point you made, which is that the first order, defending women from gender ideology, extremism, and restoring biological truth. So against the denial of the biological reality of sex, the use of legal and socially coercive means to permit men to
Yes.
self-identify as women and gain access to intimate single-sex spaces and activities designed for women. So it looks like this is being targeted at transgender women,
Yes.
and it's being positioned as a way to save or protect cisgendered women.
Yes.
Why is this? And this is played out in sports. It has played out with some very high profile people like J.K. Rowling.
Yes, they were all part of
Elon
this
Musk.
Yes.
They've all sort of, made this case. Women's rights are being affected. What do you make of this?
So I have a very simple take on it.
Sure.
And slightly detour from the question you're asking me. The biggest contention is that, quote unquote, men get into women's washroom and they will sexually harass them, abuse them. But Anuradha, I want to ask you a simple question, and I want to ask the audience a simple question. Tell me one space which cisgendered heterosexual men have not abused women, that they don't need to get into the washroom to abuse them. In the hospital, in the graveyard, in the school, in marriages, in homes, out of homes, in nappies, in adult diapers, in a sari, in a frock, whatever. Has anyone brought in censure against these men in general to talk about safeguarding? I'm not saying that there may not have been cases where there may be perverted individuals who may have abused women in these spaces. But what would you do? Would you confront the problem, or you would bring in a universal ban that prohibits a trans woman from accessing safe space for women in general? Access to sanitization or to a proper decent washroom is not a privilege. They're making it sound like it's a privilege, and we are breaching somebody's privilege.
And it's a pushback against trans women.
Right.
It's not so much about trans men. What am I missing here? What is going on?
See, I feel that when it comes to homosocial ambiances, like men fraternizing with men, it's okay. They're not really very bothered about trans men participating or going to access a men's washroom or whatever. No one is seeing what is there. It's only that they have a problem when we go and access or participate. They feel that there is an unfair advantage and we are making use of it, and we are trying to usurp everything that's meant, or that women have been evolved over a period of time. And we are saying we just want equity, we just want inclusion. We're not even on equity. I'm not even saying half the room, 1/4 of the washrooms for trans. We are just saying include us. If you can't create additional safe infrastructure, include us. And that is problematic for me, because this is going to then, it's always starts with one group. In our case, it is the trans women who are bearing. The next will be lesbian, bisexual, queer women. It will affect the gay men. So people who think that this is only going to be curtailed, and they are hoping, a lot of out American folks who are gay or non-trans, if I may say so, they are hoping that this backlash is curtailed with the trans community. So by the time he gets on with other agenda items,
that you will face the brunt of it, that the trans
it stops at us.
But you don't think it will?
I don't think it's exactly like what happened in India when you're talking about minority groups or casteism. It never ever stops with one group. Today they come for one, then they will grow the ambit, etc. And then what stops them from believing in the fact that there is only one natural order? So I think there are two approaches which are being think. Let's weather out the storm and see where he goes. The other one is that we push back. But what is it? You push back with a country that has given them the biggest mandate to achieve all of this. And it is the same majoritarian rhetoric that in many words which has not been said is give cis white men the power to be in control over everyone else.
And women are going to face the biggest brunt of that.
Exactly.
This seizing of power by the cisgendered white male.
The anonymity, the bodily autonomy, all of it is going to come. Pro-life decisions, etc., so on and so forth, are the next to come in.
Let's talk about one more thing that's come up there, because that again has implications beyond, and that is that the American government has now decided, thanks to Donald Trump, that it will not fund or in any way facilitate gender affirming medical procedures, and there is, words like mutilation, words like maiming have been used to describe young children, and they've defined children as under 19 in America who've gone in for whatever treatments are available, including puberty blockers and the rest
yes.
of it. Where do you stand on this? Because as a transgender woman and as someone who transitioned later in life,
Yes.
right? At what age did you transition?
35.
So would it have been, where do you stand on this?
So my stand is something very simple. We don't have it in India.
Yeah.
In India, all the decisions that happen in adulthood, 18 years and above.
Yes.
Having said that,
Is that a good thing?
it works for a country with very meager resources available for adult populations. We're not there in the space, in the policy space, in the medical space to take those informed decisions to allow us to work with young people and adolescent to puberty blockers. That would be a very disastrous move to take from an Indian perspective. But let's go not only to America but also the Nordic countries, etc. Now, what has happened, because the discourse in America, Nordic countries, Europe has been on the larger side around medicalization, puberty block. So puberty blockers did not come out of the blue. There has been a rational discussion around. So if you start off early, the effects of gender affirming care are seen better on individuals. So today at 44, if I look as I look, it is due to the affirming care the quality affirming care that I was able to get.
Access, yeah.
Although I started off at 30, I had my surgery done at 35, being part of the community. But if you see that discourse that's happened in the West, and people are saying, oh, you're mutil, this is exactly the kind of language that is drawing from female genital mutilation. They're using the same parallels, which is practiced by some communities, etc. They're using the same kind of language to create fear, to create radical dissent, and to get anyone who is in a caregiving or parental role to oppose any of those kind of. I think if I can call this out in the most direct term, it is someone like Elon who has a trans kid. And I can say this, whenever there has been a systematic issue of stuff that he has brought in, it can actually be tied down to the history that he shared with his child. I don't want to name the child or whatever, because but it is very problematic. Misgendering the child, dead naming the child, saying things like wokeism killed my son. You know, these are stuff that if the person is using a public platform to talk about his personal life and you see the repercussion, one can't but help make notice of the similarities. It's the same language being talked about.
All things being equal, do you believe that children should be making these decisions before adulthood?
Not in the countries that we are in, because it is still largely an unsafe space. We do not have enough support. We do not have enough parental understanding of the topic. We do not have educational institutions that have protections in place apart from what is mentioned on paper.
But you're saying if these things were in place, your personal experience makes you feel that you would have been happier had you been able to access this earlier?
Yes, but that was applicable to me. I had a serious case of gender dysphoria. If somebody were to ask me if any of my friends would go to a similar story, I can't tell it for them.
Sure.
Like, my sense of gender dysphoria was tied with multiple self-harm attempts.
9, I think.
9, yes. Until I accepted myself, my confidence, will you believe if I tell you I used to stammer? I couldn't ask directions for people because I was afraid of looking at people they would immediately judge me. So I guess those decisions need to be taken case by case between the caregiver, the care receiver, and with parental guidance. Similarly, if you take a parallel, a lot of intersex babies who are born,
Yeah.
the doctors just operated with parental consent. Are they asking the child? Are they making sure that the person's gender is going to be aligned when the person grows up? Is there going to be any dissonance between their sense of gender versus their genital organs, functional, non-functional, or whatever? Is somebody asking the baby's consent? No.
In these orders, there's a lot of sort of minute, there is a belief that a lot of people may want to transition and then transition back. How much of that is a concern?
A lot of times people go in through different procedures, and I'm going to say an aesthetic procedure like breast augmentation, etc., or fashioning of the neogenital organs,
Yeah.
like when there used to be a penis and testicles, now there is a neo vagina, or whatever, or vice versa,
Sure,
whatever.
sure.
Sometimes when those organs are not functional or not don't give you that degree of comfort, when your own transition and your life after your transition is marred by negative aspects, continuous stigma, discrimination, non-fulfilling love, or physical existence, when society rules, norms do not still accept you, there are many reasons why people feel it was better to go back to the gender that they were in before. So the reverting back to the previous sex, I'm not saying gender, but the previous sex of the individual is sometimes dotted along with many traumatic things of the past and of the present that we are not taking into account because we do not have the individual case history of the person.
Sure.
Today, if I say that, if you ask me today, Zainab, would you want to go back to being the person you were, Ernest Narona, as a male? Over my dead body, not even after my dead. But that is me, and this is me in 2025. I don't know if that's going to be, and I hope I remain like this, but I am still not in that frame of mind when I want to revert back to I would never want to do that.
So you're saying that this is an absolutely individual and personal experience in that
But
sense, and
something
you
that the
cannot
society
generalize.
is contributing to. Today, if I say that, okay, I become a woman and I want to live with a man as a husband, but there are no societal spaces, there are no spaces in buildings that are allowing me to live that. My partner will never accept me because his family will never accept us. We'll never have a baby. People will laugh at us. Wouldn't all those factors also play?
Yeah. Absolutely.
And if you see this thing, doesn't this also happen in the case of intercaste, interreligious marriages, that the trauma of someone else comes to haunt you when you decide to go ahead and do that?
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, this is such a.
I must say a very personal thing. My own niece was going to have an interreligious marriage, and it broke up at the last moment because they feared the outcome of it when they would have children. How would they bring up children of two different faiths into a singular faith? So I'm saying, if this could happen to a cisgender majoritarian person, the frequency and incidence and the impact of it would be seen much more for us, right?
Yeah, I know, absolutely. Where are we at in India? Because, I think last year was 10 years of that very famous landmark NALSA judgment in which you were one of the petitioners, isn't it? Tell us what you think that judgment has achieved in the past 10 years for transgender folk in India, and what is the gap that's still left in terms of an ideal equality?
See, I think the biggest contribution that this judgment made was that it gave me space at the table to dictate my own existence and to negotiate the terms of what this existence is going to be. 10 years prior, nobody really bothered if trans people were being killed, were not, nobody had affirmation for them, no equity in workspaces. No one even considered us good enough to have rights in a country. So imagine a situation where you are part of a country's citizenship and you don't have voice, you're not counted, you're visible and yet invisibilized. You're allowed to be where you are so that others can live easily. And you bring in this law You know, after the NALSA judgment, we came in with the Protection of Transgender Persons Act. And I'm just going to break that down very
Yeah,
simply
please
for
do.
you.
Yeah.
If 75 years after India's independence, you need a law to tell people that you can travel anywhere. You need a law to tell people that you should not discriminate against trans people and give them access to housing. You need a law that tells them, help them remain in school, give them social benefits. You need to give them law to say it is not okay to abuse them, it is not okay to beat them up. If that's what 75 years of India's independence has taken, imagine our struggle. And that's what has changed in the last 10 years. That all of these issues were there from the time we were born. It's only the last 10 years that these have come up and people have started noticing it. And when people don't take notice of it, we take them to court and we drag them along. And we make them act on it.
What is left to achieve in terms of a fuller life, in terms of access to all the
I think
entitlements as
and the
other
best thing that has
people in
happened with the
society?
NALSA judgment and with the passing of the Protection of Transgender Persons' Rights, then the Navte Johar, etc.
Yeah.
I think we've managed to put a foot in the door and kick the door open. Now, whether the door is big enough for all of us to fit in and have a space within that room inside is yet to be questioned. Like, for example, I always keep telling, you know, after the marriage equality case where they said trans people could go and get married.
Heterosexual trans people.
Heterosexual, like,
Yeah.
Okay. Am I going to ask you what is the proof of your heterosexuality except the fact that you sleep with men, assuming that you sleep with men?
Yeah.
There is no sign that tells you that I am a heterosexual or like
Yeah.
you know. So
Fair enough. Fair enough.
so I feel that the proof of the pudding is in eating it. Tomorrow, if I decide to get married and I have my wedding band read and I want to go to Don Bosco's church in Matunga and tell the priest to
You
marry
have the
us,
right to do it.
I technically I have the right to. The priest might throw something like a crucifix on me or something like that. But that's it. Or for that matter, go to a gurudwara or to a masjid or to a temple and not be refused because it says personal act as well as special marriages act.
Yeah.
I think for each one of us, because we are in a different trajectory now, we are all moving towards getting into a space where we wish not to be discriminated against. Enough now. Stop calling us that shit because you think that just being a homosexual or a trans person, you can degrade someone just because of who they are and who they choose to love or how they look. I think we need to stop at that.
Zainab, when I look at, streaming shows, OTT shows, fiction, both the LGBTQ community, including trans people, seem to be getting represented quite regularly. Is that a sign of greater acceptance in society, or what do you think is happening there?
So two views.
Do you feel seen today in popular media, in pop culture, as a trans person?
So maybe if I was a Gen Z, I would have said yes.
Okay. Yeah.
So someone who's now Gen X, 45, I can't even call myself that now. but having said that, if I were to talk about certain things from my perspective, I think the biggest issue is that are all the characters that we see on screen still caricatures or are they real everyday characters?
What's your assessment?
I still think they're caricatures.
Okay.
Kubra Seth or Sushmita Sen, which is a highly fictionalized version of the person's life story. But you know, it's not necessarily integrating us into mainstream. We are still like a caricature, one character that pops out. But then you see today's OTT series, and there are many such characters which will help develop the story, fun element, romance, terror element, etc. So on and so forth. So I think okay from a representation because we are part of the landscape. It's like being like a tree on a garden.
So no, but so when you have trans people play themselves, like you saw in Made in Heaven, So that's a good thing. You need more of that. And now,
Yes.
like you're seeing, the Mexican actress who played the lead in Amelia Perez.
Yeah.
So is that more acceptance?
If you're not finding a face or a character that can be curated into something, I wouldn't mind seeing a non-trans person play a trans because it's a role.
It's acting.
It's acting. Exactly. Thank you for saying that. So anyone can act. The preference and the need would be to get trans people to play that because of equity.
Is the population count for transgender folk, which is supposed to be about 5 lakh, that's not the real figure. I would imagine there would be many, many more.
So-
and we haven't had a census.
Yes. For whatever reason,
Yeah,
we've not had a
yeah.
census. I don't see ourselves having a census because there will be a delimitation exercise.
Yeah,
There's a
immediately.
different
Yeah.
political
Yeah.
reason.
Yeah.
I was in Delhi and I was working with the national government when we did the census and we influenced part of the census. So it only says male, female, and other. Most of the times, the people who went in the census data collectors, when they took one look at your face and determined whether you're male, female, or other. I don't know if it was accurate, whether people understood the mandate, whether people even had the time, the mental space to ask those questions and to get those informations better. It is highly improbable. Even if I take
That number.
2%,
Yeah.
1% of any population as trans, 1%. 1 billion में तो 10 लाख ऐसे ही हो जाए.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm just saying we've long passed the 1 billion mark.
Yeah. Also, Zainab, give us a sense of the, I think you represent a person like I do with a lot of privileges, right? We are from Mumbai, born and brought up in Mumbai. We went to English medium school, so we speak in English. And then we've had professional careers that have emanated from that. So your experience of being a trans person, it could be very different from some of the people we've met working in the trans cafe. And so many others who you meet, and you're creating shelters in Pune. We'll talk a little bit about that. So what is the experience? There won't be a standard experience, and can more be done to protect and help people? And are these Garima Grihas which are available, are those effective?
See,
I can see your expression. I think your expression is, you have a very expressive face,
yes,
right?
I wish more people would read.
Would pay attention to your expressions.
So, just wanted to counter you on the privilege bit. My father was a truck driver.
Okay.
We stayed in a one-room chawl in Parel,
Okay.
next to Tata Mills.
Okay.
I don't know if that was privileged. I happened to be born in a Catholic family that gave me access to a Catholic education institute.
Yeah.
Now, if you say that Catholic people will not go to a Catholic school because there's a church attached to it, I'll count it as, okay, you count it as privilege. Okay, I said, fine, take the perks of being a Catholic. My parents could not afford to complete any of their children's education. My eldest sister is only 11th standard passed. The second sister went to degree college but had to give up. I went to 12th standard and I worked from 12. I worked in the call center, completed my education, and then got on the street and begged. If you call that privilege, yes. The Garima Grah that we see today is one of the government's biggest blunders, because from the last 23 months they haven't been paid. They haven't been paid at all. So whatever rhetoric, logic, ease of doing business, centralized thing is absolutely rubbish. The Garima Grah also only targets trans folks for short duration, up to 6 months. Now, if you practically ask me this question, is it normative? Is it achievable that a person in 6 months is given psychosocial job related interventions to make you in ship shape, and you get out of the shelter and you face the world? You're running away from somewhere. I'm not coming out for a holiday. I'm not going to the Eurostar.
Sure.
I'm leaving behind my family. I'm coming with just a bag of clothes, perhaps not even like 5 suitcases in a row. I might come with not even a night suit. I might not have soap. I might not have toothbrush or whatever. You're starting with that trauma counseling, helping the person regroup their life, and making sense suddenly from the safety or the unsafety of wherever you're coming into a totally different space where you're sharing with so many unknown people, starting learning a skill, getting confident. If God forbid if you're a violence survivor or whatever, getting through that, 6 months is not enough. So on your show, I'm going to make an announcement that we are starting one of India's first LGBTQ shelter homes.
That's fabulous.
And it is dedicated to Ashok Rao Kavi and for his work in the community, because had he not to be there, we wouldn't have been here.
Yeah.
And we
the
formed-
battles would have been longer
very
because you were
different,
standing on
very
his
different.
shoulders, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So we used to call her Ashok Amma, and we decided to call our shelter Amma Ka Ghar.
Nice.
So mother's house. Anyone can go to your mother's house at
Lovely.
any time. You can. Yes. So want to change that and evolve it into something that we can create a movement and prove to people that if people are empowered, we can make a great nation together.
Is there greater social acceptance for trans folks in India today?
Yes.
There is.
Definitely. The fact that you are interviewing me, you invited me to CNBC in your previous role. We spoke about the business case.
That's because we admire you, and
yes,
you
but
know.
I also feel that at one point of time, when you get into a capitalistic mode where you are earning for yourself, you're becoming job creators, you're becoming revenue grossers, you're providing opportunities, you are seen and perceived as communities around you as contributing to the society.
Yeah. That's when the acceptance becomes even easier.
Better.
Yeah. We are at the Trans Cafe. Tell us a little bit about the idea behind this, because in your current avatar, you're a social entrepreneur.
Yes.
We'll talk about the other avatars in a bit, but let's talk about this one.
So for the longest period of time, Anuradha, you see trans people on signals. That's the imagery that people have worked with.
Yeah.
And every time you will find the itch to tell a trans person, "Aap log dusra kyun nahi kuch karte? Why don't you do something different?" I think no one has actually solutioned that. Okay, मैं आपको अपने घर पे काम देता हूँ. Nobody, that didn't even work for the female beggars on the signal. How would it work for trans people? So we said, okay, you pose the question, here's our solution. Food is something that we start imbibing right from the time you're conceived in your mother's womb to the time you die, and even after that. We are part of certain cultures around the world that even feed the dead. We do that. So we said, why not start something as basic as food, because that connects us all through, across. And we started this small cafe just as we were recovering from COVID, when people were stepping out of the businesses and enterprises. We stepped in, people laughed at us.
Yeah, the food business is very difficult.
Yes. And it's 3 years now, touch wood. We've now spread our wings. We've got into corporate catering from 1. We will now have 4 to 5. We're going to Pune in April. And I think the possibilities and we are a good test case for people to say that with hard work, with commitment, and with very strong second rank leadership, you can actually get them to be...
And everyone working at the Trans Cafe is trans.
Yes, trans, non-binary. There could be a few gay men also working with us. And we've seen that we are actually able to pull people up and work with them. We don't have to create anything different. My staff decides on their own if they want to go and participate in a rally, in a protest, to help someone do anything. So it's on their own terms and conditions.
More power to you, Zainab.
Thank you.
More power to you. Let's talk about the other thing that's happening in America, and which will have direct consequences here, especially because so many American multinationals are employers in India, and that is this big pushback to DEI. So I found this little bit in this order very interesting. In order to create steps to deter DEI programs or principles, this order says, identify up to 9 potential civil compliance investigations of public traded companies, large non-profits, associations, foundations, institutions of higher education, state and local bar and medical associations. So he's actually asking the American government to find people and investigate and see whether what their DEI initiatives have resulted in, and that they do not promote DEI anymore. How much of a blow is this?
See, I'll tell you something. I understand, as someone who has been a DEI official in multiple organizations, that there is a fear. there is the fear of rollback, there is the fear of amalgamation, there is the fear of watering down. But for people who really believe that it is going to create a major impact on the DEI funding that is available, we were never adequately funded, even in the best years under the Biden administration, who brought in the reverse. They brought in executive orders on unconscious bias, etc. training. But I think one of the executive orders was to also roll back the unconscious bias trainings. But tell me something. We never live in a land which is full of the proverbial milk and honey, right? I'll give you an example. In 2014, I used to work with UNDP and I was based in Delhi, and the new government came into order. It ordered similar set of investigations about people who received money from different development partners on doing exactly the same, the work on equity with marginalized communities, etc. It is something that you have to be prepared for. It does have some impact, but there is nothing stopping Indian organizations or organizations working out of India, because you still have the Protection of Persons with Disability Act. You still have the Protection of Transgender Persons Act. You still have the HIV/AIDS Act. You still have gender representation in board. These are Indian compliances if you're going to be working. So unless you want to take panga with the Indian government and say, I'm not going to be doing this because this thing, someone can actually take you to court and say that there is absolutely...
So you're not worried about American multinational employers in India pushing back on
They
DEI?
should be worried about how their brands get impacted and how much of it is attractive now.
Because this was also big brand building, a badge of honor.
It was a badge of honor. So we will see some, in a way I'm also happy, I will see less of drama in Pride Month. Less of pink washing in Pride Month, but it will also bring to the forefront the real allies of the community who were not there because it favored some government order, but who were there because they believed in the cause. We need to be alert and be prepared, and also be prepared to shake down a couple of corporates in the court to make them realize that this is India. We still have the constitution that protects minorities.
Where are we at today where the LGBTQI community is concerned? What are things that should be on the agenda?
I think there are 2-3 things that have emerged very strongly. From being a minuscule minority in the Section 377 case to 22 odd petitions representing double those cases, people came out from all walks of life. Celebrity, non-celebrity.
I can't imagine what a liberating experience it must be.
And the amount of people who argued for us, for our case, and ultimately it was like you saying that you don't want chocolate, you want a lollipop. We understand the pain for you not having a lollipop and how that affects you, but you still cannot have it. So I guess we always knew that this battle is going to be a long drawn one, and something that we will have to work out eventually with cases, with legislations, with political will, etc., so on and so forth.
I mean, you had LGBTQ mentioned in election manifestos in the 2024
we got people
election.
to do that. I mean to say, of course, the parties who... Would you believe if I tell you that Lakshmi and I were the ones to influence the BJP in 2019 manifesto to put transgender day on the evening before the agenda was being launched? We went to Ram Madhav, he got those two, we gave him 3 points, he removed 1 point, he kept the 2 plain looking ones like economic empowerment and welfare and empowerment, stuff like that. But I'm saying, if you are able to do that, you gain some negotiating ground.
You're seen.
You're there. You may not be heard, you might still be, dismissed. But the fact is that people can't ignore that a powerhouse has been created. And there are people across the divide, left or right. There are community people everywhere, irrespective of which part of the spectrum that you are, which part of political, religious ideology that you follow.
Sure.
We have queer people everywhere. We had them before, we have them now, and we'll have them tomorrow as well. So yesterday, today and tomorrow. We are much more empowered. You see real life examples of people staying together, loving on the streets, loving on the screens, reading literature on them, doing your social media, matching around them. I think there is a slow change that has happened, which has happened very unexpectedly. I think people were not sure when we won the Section 377
Yeah.
case, whether this social change will actually usher in. You see so many people living together, and I guess that is in the next 10 years only going to get better for a lot of people, because this change is now going to radiate from a tier 1 city to a tier 2 city as well. We have to follow the Dalit capitalism idea, where you're building your economic fortune, you're building your society, you're building your culture, you get educated, you contribute to the economy, and then you create an ecosystem for yourself. You keep on evolving. You're not dependent on what the code tells you to.
What would you put on the agenda today for the government, given that in 23, when the verdict came out, the Supreme Court directed the government to look into so many of the practical operational difficulties LGBTQI people were facing?
The government has actually put a high powered committee. They are studying, they are meeting with people, they're taking public opinion, measured public opinion
Yeah.
also, because they are also opening it up, and they are making sure that they're getting a spectrum of people. Now, I may agree with the people who are there in that lot and are not. I mean, I may not want to agree, but it's okay. I think the fact is that people are being consulted, they are sending in recommendations, and there will be some change that will come out. It might be some policy level implications, some key documentation changes, etc., and the how we do business, insurance, etc., which would be the easy ticket items for them to kind of create any change, and to get the eyeballs rolling on this one. I think if the government were to just to pick up one agenda, and I think if they were to talk about violence, intra-family violence, natal family violence, spousal partner violence, and they're able to work towards it, and create a system that something like Prevention of Domestic Violence Act, where you are assured of some reprimand from the government, arrest, non-bailable offences, etc. Then people are scared to act. People today are not scared to, if you dupe your partner, if you beat up your partner, if you kill your partner, because they ultimately, there is a transgender person, no one is interested in following up on those cases. Or a queer person, people who just want to forget about it and move ahead with their lives.
Okay, so you're saying that if something could be done in that direction, it would be very helpful
for me,
to the
at
queer
least
community.
I look at that, because
Sure.
these communities continue to go through
I
intrinsic
mean,
violence.
we are a violent society and country in any case, right?
We are a violent race.
So for the queer community, it would be
Yes,
multiplied.
yes.
That specter of violence looming over them.
Corrective rape is a huge thing. Faith-based healers. I was born when I started self-harm and went to multiple, including consuming poison, and my parents thought that I was actually possessed. And they took me to all kinds of faith-based healers, Portuguese church,
Yeah, no.
St. Michael's church, Tabor Divine Retreat Ashram, to get healed. So I had to finally tell them I'm healed. Stop going to those places and be prayed over. So I'm just trying to say that all of these things do leave scars behind on your mind for a very long period of time. And people might think that what is the impact of these babas or priests or Maulvis or whatever on you? It has. So I would say that if you are just working on the violence and the stigma part, for me that's good enough ground for the government. And I would be happy to vote for the government who brings in this kind of measures, at least, to bring in this protection.
That a party which promises that.
Yes.
Zainab, religion. You were born a Catholic, but you practice Sufi Islam. What
Sufism.
Sufism. What has been your experience of organized religion, given that organized religion hasn't supported you in your quest, in your journey as an individual? And where do you find comfort from it, if you do find comfort from it?
So I remember the last time I went to church was when my mother passed away in 2013. And that's the last time I ever went to church. So 2-3 things. I was born in a Catholic family, but from a very young point of time, I absolutely love Krishna. So, from an organized religion to a non organized space to a semi formal space, I totally believe that you can be gay, queer, whatever you call yourself, the unicorn, and still have a religious side to you. Religious helps us also, being religious, I'm not, or spiritual, helps us find deeper purpose to us seeking answers. It's a journey of the soul.
Yeah.
And that is where Sufism actually ties that root. So I am heavily influenced by teachings of Mirabai and Ras Khan. So a lot of people might not know who Ras Khan is. Ras Khan was a medieval poet living in Braj Bhumi, and he wrote many poems on his love for Krishna.
Krishna.
And there is a Ras Khan ki chhatri in next to Gokul. People should go, and some very amazing dohas and bhajans written by him, very similar, but because he's Muslim, the connection doesn't work that well. So I feel that people should embrace their spiritual side, and that is exactly what I'm going to be doing in the next phase of my life, to embrace my spiritual side, which is going to be very different than what I have been doing till date. And maybe that is also one way of being able to offer sanctuary to people who are actually looking for meaning, purpose in life. Because when you are a destitute, when you are shunned by your relatives, when you are shunned by your partners and left to nothing, spiritualism, gives you ample of opportunity to heal, and vice versa. It can also make you a crazy person at the end of the day. But having an option is always better than living in procrastination and saying that, okay, this will not work.
So spiritualism, spiritual comfort and
Yes.
succor for the soul is critical. It's part of your quest as an
It
individual.
also defines us as society better, and that is how the East differs from the West. That we found our spaces in society and culture because of our deep spiritual, either ascribing spirituality to us or supernatural stuff to us, whether it's being the two-spirited person or the Hijra identity or the Khwaja Sarai or the Katois in Thailand. You always attributed them some amount of above normal,
not
strength.
like everybody else.
Yes, not in the same line.
As a trans woman, how easy or difficult has it been to find love, given that finding love for women and men is difficult?
I think it's very complicated for us. I think even if you find a partner whom you shared a few loving moments with and you've seen some future, when it comes to societal expectations, social sanctity, the fact that you will never be able to register a marriage, and this I'm talking about from some time, not necessarily as a point of time, but this, the ability not to have your own biological children, the fact that you never would have a loving family supporting you, and even if you do have a few role models who've been able to do that, it's still largely an unachievable dream. If I were to just talk about my own partner, we were there together for 11 years. We got married 7 years ago when India was still battling decriminalization. And during COVID, we were staying in two different cities. I was in Delhi, he was in and I suddenly realized he got married without telling me, and I came to know that only after 3 years once he had a kid. And he had duped me of about more than 1 crore. We bought a property together, that property went, and I could either make myself bitter about it or I could take that as a lesson and move forward in life. I was telling you earlier on that he was covered, his parents were covered under the insurance, his mother got a knee replacement, his father got treated, he got treated, and I'm saying, like, okay, what could have been
On your medical insurance as a corporate
as a corporate employee. We've traveled the world together. So I'm saying that finding love may be easy, but continuing to be in love is a huge challenge. And that is why when you asked me that question earlier, it's not only about the decision about reverting back to someone's sense of sex previously. It is all of these factors around us that drive us, insane. Yes.
Zainab, I'm going to, what can I say? I want to leave you with one question, which is what to you is the biggest joy you feel being a woman?
I think the biggest joy is to feel the sanctity that, yes, I share responsibilities that previously I would only have to be content with just looking at. Being ability to manage a home, to bring up children. Without a uterus, I have 50 kids. I'm in charge of their lives. They're dependent on
So
me.
being a mother in that sense, being maternal
I think
is for
yes,
you.
being maternal,
Yeah.
being the caregiver, being the karta of the family. The Hindu undivided family, rules say that you have to have a karta. So I feel that women are kartas of the family. I never considered myself to be a role model. If someone tells me be a role model, I said, please don't go to my role modeling. It's better that you don't think of me as a role model. But even if I'm telling you this example, I've never spoken about this ever. I'm telling you, I used to work at KPMG and I left KPMG, and one day I got a message on LinkedIn from someone, and it said ex KPMG, and she said, hi, do you remember me? I said, randomly said a lie, and I said, yes, I remember you. He said, you may not remember me, but I used to sit diagonally opposite you next to the glass facade. So I pretended, yes, I actually knew her. And he said, I never got a chance to tell you this when you were in KPMG, but just seeing you walk into those doors with your colorful attire, with your powerful personality, with your smile, just made me so empowered, even though we did not have any natural connect between us. So I think just by being yourself, you can actually empower people around you who you never know who's looking up to you for motivation or strength. And imagine that I had not done anything for that woman, and she takes the time to write back, and I save that screenshot of the message and I read it once when I feel low. Because it really reflects that sometimes in many subtle ways you're able to change the status quo for so many people by just being yourself. And that is what womanhood has taught me. The power of being yourself can actually embody what Margaret Mead said, that never believe in the power of a small committed people to change the world. In fact, that's the only thing that ever has. So I guess a committed woman is the one that changes people's destiny around, and I'm happy to be part of that existence now.
Well, sister,
Yes.
it was lovely talking to you, and thank you for being so candid, because I think so many people would probably like to connect, would probably like to know more, and then you also hold back because you don't know if you're crossing personal lines, if you're asking too many nosy questions. So thank you for being so generous with your life experience and telling it like it is. I wish you a lot of luck, Zainab. It was lovely, this conversation.
Thank you.
We'll keep talking.
Definitely.